Welcome to the Wandering Road, a place where the unseen moves all around us. The stories you'll hear aren't just whispered legends. They're shadows that cling, footsteps that follow, and whispers that never fade. Every turn pulls you closer to the unknown, and once you've heard what waits here, the night will never feel the same again.
Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Southern Demonology. This time, a joint release with my wonderful friends, or not so wonderful, depending upon the day, of the Wandering Road folks of Chris and Dean. I love to have you guys here. Thank y'all for
Hello.
having. And today, we are going to be talking about a rather spicy topic, which can be considered an extension of our demonology series that we've been carrying on about for the past year or so, and that would be demonic gateways, or specifically, what is demonic and what is not? Because this is, I think, for as long as there's ever going to be religion, this is going to be a prevalent topic, and it's going to be a fun time to discuss. How are you gents doing today?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just a little tired. The weather has been so up and down where I'm at. Like literally it was in the mid 70s and then it dropped to like 29 and it started snowing. We had like 2-3 inches of snow and I felt like crap for the most of the week.
Yeah, same thing here. We got an inch of snow, and now it's back in the 50s or 60s or whatever the hell it is. There's actually, according to old Southern folklore, there are 5 seasonal shifts, and each, especially coming from winter into spring, each one of those is named for the type of flower or fruit which is known to bloom during that particular time. So one of them will be blackberry, etc. And that was apparently so boring that everyone went silent. So I don't blame you. So, Mr. Chris, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, I would actually, because I kind of bitched about this to you a little earlier today when I knew we were going to be talking about this specific topic. One thing that gets on my nerves, and I don't care who gets mad at it, is not everything is demonic. Just because it has demon in the title, Demon Slayer, K-pop Demon Hunters, does not mean it's flipping demonic. Pull your head out of your ass and get a clear understanding that that's not the case. Just because it has that in the title doesn't mean it's going to conjure anything. Take a second, take a step back, like we say in the corporate world, in the IT world. Let's take a high level look at this. Like, let's take a step back and look at this from a high level.
50,000-foot view.
A 50,000-foot view. Let's not try to boil the ocean, people. That
Strategic.
Let's be strategic about this, right?
Let's use our synergy to.
No, but on a serious
Oh,
note, it's so
yeah, dude.
frustrating because,
Yeah, man.
like, I'm sitting here watching Demon Slayer. If you pay attention to the title, what the hell do you think Demon Slayer is about? Just take one guess.
I've seen it, so I wouldn't.
If you,
provide it.
Dean, you probably never watched it, Dean. If you saw something
No.
titled Demon Slayer, what do you think that show or that comic is going to be about?
I mean, if I knew
The
it was
title gives it
anime,
away.
yeah, I mean, so like, it's like, what's that one, like Death Note, where I would think of like something like Death Note where there's like beasts and creatures and there's a hero and he's
Yeah.
trying to like slay, take care of them.
Yeah,
and whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Slaying demons. Demon hunters. Do you think it's demons hunting people or the other way around?
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, I see what
People
you're saying.
fucking hunting demons. I'm sorry, dude. Like, I'm just going to end up ranting on this because I've been
people
so
think
exposed to people like this throughout my entire life that it's so frustrating. Any creative outlet, if you draw something or you write about something that is inherently unique or different and it makes them uncomfortable, they automatically label it as demonic. And it's so dumb. It's so dumb. I'm sorry. It's dumb. Like,
So
okay,
people
I'll end my
think
rant now and just like hand it over to you guys.
so people think I wasn't picking up on that in the beginning when you were asking me. So you're saying that there are people who think that K-pop demon hunters or demon slayers or whatever, they think that it's from the perspective of the other way around, where like the main character is the demon and they're hunting, like they're the evil entities that are, or you're saying that
No,
like just the fact that the demons are in the show, it's like a negative thing.
yeah, anything that even remotely smacks of the infernal, whether it has demon in the name or has, as Chris was saying, weird creatures in it, people automatically get something hairy up their butts and will just go off about it. And I mean, I'm a prime example of this. I've suffered from this stigma almost my entire life. I
Mm.
loved drawing when I grew up. And as anyone who's listened to the show knows, I grew up in the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. And I love drawing monsters. In fact, I had a whole creation of them, which numbered, I think at the end, like over 150 different types, called hide-a-behinds. And they had big horns on their head and horns coming out their mouth. And people, when they saw this, thought that, oh my God, this child is touched by the demonic. And I even like drew a
He's been
comic
touched.
and I even drew a comic and sold it at school.
Oh my
And
God.
the
In the Bible Belt. Oh
principal
my
came,
God.
yeah, the principal came back and actually complained to my mom and said, we can't have this because it's giving the young kids nightmares. And
Oh my gosh.
even though it was nothing that would ever do anything like that, it was ridiculous.
Wow. I I mean, what's the closest, like, did you ever have anyone come up to you and say like, "Oh, we need to have a serious talk about this because you're getting too close to the devil demonic side," or like
Yeah.
what was your craziest experience? Like someone talked, like pull off to the side, talk to you about it?
Well, the one that really shook me to my core. So when I was in 8th grade, I began playing Dungeons and Dragons. And this was anything from first edition to second edition. And my mom actually sat me down and was alternately cursing me and crying, saying that it's, D&D is nothing but the devil and I could go to hell and I was endangering my soul. And she's the most like irreligious person I know. There's no church, there's no nothing, but yet
Really? Interesting.
she was so consumed by all the news media and all the satanic panic that was, of course, evident during those times, because I'm an old fart, that she really thought that I was endangering my ever living soul. So, yeah, that shook me.
Did you guys
Did I
ever so
stop? No.
no, of course not. No, because it's fun. There's a movie. I'm sure everyone, like most people listening, are going to know what I'm talking about immediately. But if you haven't seen it, watch this older movie called Detroit Rock City. And I can't remember you know what I'm talking about. I don't remember. Maybe JJ, you probably know or remember more about it. I can't remember the band they were obsessed with. I think it was Kiss. And it's
Yeah.
about these young boys growing up in Detroit, and they were so infatuated, like to rock out. They really loved Kiss, and the mom was always like, "It's the devil, like it's evil music or whatever." That just reminds me, like the similar story. Such a great movie.
It is, but yeah, I mean, I know that we've touched upon satanic panic in the past, and I'm not looking to retread a whole bunch of well explored pathways, but
Yeah.
yeah, D&D was definitely in the limelight for that one. And even as a kid, like if my relatives ever wanted to know, what they should get me for a birthday or Christmas, my mom would simply say, find the ugliest monster that you can find in the store and buy that. And that was
Aw.
ideally what I loved the most.
Well, that's kind of nice that she still like went along with it. That's cool.
As long as it wasn't D&D, she didn't particularly care. So,
That's interesting. That
but the
I guess
ironic
maybe.
part about that is, there was this major group called MAD, Mothers Against Dungeons and Dragons. And they spread nationally, and they're the ones that were saying that D&D was corrupting and was a satanic influence, et cetera, et cetera. Now, don't get me wrong. TSR at the time, the company that controlled D&D, they did produce books which liberally used religious themes. So some of this came down on their heads for the lack of PR savvy in which they had. But the funny thing is that MAD became so well known that it actually drove people to try and hear about D&D than it ever did from detracting from it. And that's one of the main reasons why when you think TTRPG, the first thing that comes to mind usually is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, JJ, I know we kind of had like a path we wanted to follow, and I kind of want to stick to that as well, talking about trying to identify like what is scary as opposed to like, what can actually be a gateway to the demonic. But one thing I wanted to chime in with is, and I wanted both your perspectives on this, isn't it kind of like this type of reaction to, I would say, any type of creativity is, I view it as anti-creative and anti-intellectual, because just because, for example, if I draw like a minotaur, a hero killing a minotaur or something like that, or something of the equivalent from Greek mythology or something, or I create like you, JJ, you created your own type of monsters. It's creativity. We like to explore things that we don't understand. We like to explore things that we don't know. Sometimes is it to your own detriment? Potentially. Like if you go messing with the Ouija board or tarot cards and you don't have the proper intentions and don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Using those type of tools can potentially welcome in something that you can't get rid of or open up a gateway. But from that perspective, I just view all of this type of behavior and all of these type of reactions as you do not have a single creative bone in your body because you can't sit there for 5 seconds and try to understand what the art or game or whatever is trying to convey. It's not that difficult. I hate when people like to use things as a shield for ignorance. And it does such a disservice for people that actually deal with this stuff. I mean, for you, JJ, you do consultations for people that reach out to you that think they are afflicted by this stuff. And how would you react if you had someone set up a consultation with you and you get in that room or call with them and they're like, well, my kid started watching K-pop Demon Hunter and now we think we're being attacked by demons. Like, you would probably just immediately leave that call because it's
I would first try to explain, and I've ran into this with certain members of congregations where their worldview is so narrow that they think that almost all TV is inherently evil because they have the audacity to show a gay person. The narrow mindedness is so terrifying to witness and behold in these situations that it's a lost cause. Like I could talk till I'm blue in the face and no one would ever pay attention to what I'm saying because I am automatically in the wrong.
right. Yeah. And I think I come from like the reason I'm coming in so hot on this topic, it's because you've been doing Southern Demonology for what, almost a decade. Dean and I have been doing TWR for 3.5 years. And what we're trying to do is to provide an outlet for people to, one, share their stories, and two, provide people with at least some type of educated guesses and information of what this stuff could potentially be. And when people behave in that manner, it does such a disservice to anybody involved in this type of community. And it's just frustrating because you automatically get lumped into that.
It is, but there are certain individuals who only see the world in black and white, and there's never any gray whatsoever. And it's those, in fact, there's a psychological phenomenon which simply says, the more you don't know, the more impossible it becomes for you to realize how much you don't know. And if you apply that more liberally, and I think that this type of black and white worldview ultimately becomes a huge disservice to the individuals in which have it. But
I think that goes to the broader question about the nature of existence, and it's like, what do you believe existence that as a human is more about? Is it more about the severity of life and the seriousness of it and the gravity of the pain and suffering that you have to kind of traverse and deflect through seeking out religious freedom or something or touching the divine rather? Or is it more about, like you said, JG, like broadening your perspective and understanding that people are not as different and the kindness side of it? And the thing that I jump off into, going back into like like you said, Chris, the creativity and all that stuff, the stuff that's put out there. I think it's interesting that if you were to put like a biblical, like for someone who is like narrow-minded, if you were to put the biblical perspective on it, say, oh, it was Jesus fighting the demons in a show, or even if it's like, like, oh, the person fighting the demons is religiously sanctioned by God or Jesus, and like that's what they're doing. But even if you take that away, it's kind of silly, right? Because like in these shows or even in D&D or whatever, you're fighting evil spirits, like you're fighting evil monsters or entities or whatever, and that kind of seems like a positive, right? Like if you have people who are doing stuff in these shows or content who are trying to suppress or defeat evil spirits or demons, like that seems like it should be a positive, good thing for someone who believes that narrow-mindedness. But like you guys said, just because it's a media thing, mainstream, it becomes negative. So that's where my brain goes with this.
there is a, you know, there's a practical side to this as well. So, as Chris alluded to, I do hold consultations for people that think that they are besieged by something. And one of the first questions that always comes up is this demonic? And I have a set of criteria which helps to at least point in the right direction. I can't say that yes, it absolutely is. No, it absolutely is not. But it at least provides a lot of, pretty solid ground for how to continue on that front. And luckily, I haven't encountered people that have said, oh, my kid watched this cartoon show and suddenly they're besieged by the devil. It's never been anything so ridiculous as that. But it's, if someone has serious things going on in their house or something that's following them, I'm not going to give specifics because I don't ever want to intrude upon anyone's privacy to that extent. Just whatever is said in confidence. But, that is a practical distinction. But going beyond that, just trying to assure other people out there that even though you may think something is demonic, you have to look at criteria. And if you don't, then you're giving the infernal a hell of a lot more credit than what they are due. And in the end, that is more dangerous than never assuming that something is demonic.
So, JJ, let's jump right into this then. So, let me ask you, what is some sort of, how could you recognize it's demonic? What are some telltale signs as opposed to something, that's like you wouldn't consider it to be the case?
So if it's simple bumps in the night, that's probably not going to be demonic. Some of the things that really kind of tell that something has gone well beyond even the paranormal pale is, does it inspire dread? If it does that, then it doesn't necessarily mean, but it's a pretty good indication that you're dealing with something a lot darker than your run of the mill haunting. Does it react to religious artifacts? If it does, then that is an excellent sign that you're dealing with something more than a ghost. Those are two of the primary things that I look at. And one of the others is, does it follow? So if you move domiciles and the same thing happens, that could be a sign that it is a demonic or infernal entity rather than a simple haunting. or does it happen outside of the home? If you're going to work, do you still feel something? Is it bothering you? That is a good indication. Does that make sense to y'all?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess a follow-up question to that would be like switching back over to the people who are concerned about the media and the shows that maybe like their children are consuming or something like that. What I mean, this is the thing that's really difficult. So I feel like if you have an attraction from the demonic, and maybe even if it's like not pre-existing yet, like in the sense that it is making itself known to the point where it's a problem, but then it coincides with people who are starting to have children or something that are creeping into these shows, and then they're starting to experience more of this these potentially demonic experiences. How would you respond to somebody dealing with that? And the reason I bring up that question is because it seems like there could be any vector, and like for instance a doll, right? Like a doll that is seemingly benign, that should have no original, like if you were to guess there, oh, there's nothing demonic about this toy or this doll or something like that, but things start attaching to it, or people are suspecting there's an attachment. How would you respond to somebody where it's coinciding with like a show or something like that, where things are starting to happen more? Would you just say that it has nothing to do with it whatsoever, or would you maybe suggest like, oh, maybe the infatuation that somebody has with the demonic as they're watching these shows, could that be a potential vector? Because it's not the show itself, it's them aligning their awareness and kind of negative, like drawing the negativity to them, because they're so infatuated with the minutia of the demonic, or the idea of the demonic in like a show or a content or something like that.
I mean, that is a fantastic question because I have had an interview with a individual who became very interested in sort of darker things because of Indiana Jones, believe it or not, Kalima, and that
I knew
kind
you
of
were gonna say that. I knew you were
yeah.
gonna say that.
It's an
It's
inter
such a bad representation of it too.
Of course it is. I mean, it has very little to nothing to do with the actual thing, but that's
Yeah.
Hollywood for you. I mean, it over exaggerates everything. But that is a really good point that it is that interest which can draw you in. And the more you give into that, then it can become a potential vector. As we said, there are at least three different stages to demonic possession. And then it first starts off with obsession. And that's just a purely mental thing. But the less your spiritual house is in order, the more openings that you were giving to the infernal to come into your life. And if you're if you started watching Evil, for example, and you became truly interested in demonic sigils and began researching them and, seeing how valid they may be, etc., that could very well become a vector. But that interest alone is not going to expose you. Now, if you're doing a ton of other bad stuff in your life and you combine that with this infatuation, maybe, or let's say that you start associating with an individual who absolutely does not have their shit in order, then yeah, you could be opening yourself via another individual. I can always rely upon the business shorthand of emails of thoughts.
I feel like I'm talking too much, so I'm leaving some
Yeah.
room for Chris to.
So based off of that example that you just gave, JJ, well, not example, but kind of like that point you just made. So where would we draw the line between being open to it and reckless experimentation, we should say? Like, for example, I love horror movies. We all love horror movies here. Dean, I don't know if you like horror movies. Do you?
But yeah,
I feel
love
like
'em,
I
yeah.
never asked you this directly.
I used to watch them all the time, and the only reason I kind of drew back is just because I've been so busy. I haven't even been watching any movies really. But yeah, I like
Yeah.
horror.
Plus, you
I was
have
about
little
to
kids too, so it's like you can't really.
You have to wait strategically. Yeah.
I was about to say, if you don't like horror movies, get on out because we don't need your kind around here.
No, man. I let me tell you something. So like I've watched horror movies so much, even from a young age. Like I love going all the way back to Tales from the Crypt when I would lay on the floor and my parents would watch it or something, and I was told to like look away at the scariest parts, but I would still peek, or I would go out to the movie rental place with my best friend, and sleepovers we'd always rent at least one horror movie. And I'll tell you one that like messed me up was Dr. Giggles. That is a super old, corny, cheesy horror movie. But when you're a kid, you don't really understand like cheesy, corny yet. So the one thing that messed me up from that movie, Dr. Giggles, was when this guy was standing next to a door, and Dr. Giggles, the evil demonic doctor, stuck a needle through a keyhole and injected this guy with something. And then he just started bleeding from the eyes, the ears, the mouth, the nose, like just completely. And he just died. And I thought for so many years after that that it was possible that you could be injected with something that would cause that to happen. Of course, there's no such thing. But yeah, just going back to the whole comment about Hollywood, like just completely running with something crazy. And but yeah, that's just my little horror movie side story from youth that
No,
messed me
that's a
up.
great point because I remember the very first horror movie I ever saw, we saw in theaters, and it was Monster in the Closet. Have y'all
Oh
ever ran across
yes,
this gem?
yes.
My God. And of course, I mean, it is the most, horror comedy kind of thing that could ever be devised. But 6-year-old me had no idea what corny or cheesy or horror comedy ever would. And it scared the absolute bejesus out of me. God. But I loved it and I kept coming back to horror every single time I could. And that persisted all the way up till today.
Kind of reminds me of Gremlins. Remember, like Gremlins was supposed to be like they started out making Gremlins as a horror, and then if you go back and you watch the interviews of the people who were directing it or whatever, putting the movie together, they're like, this is a comedy. Like this is, and then they just really ran with the comedy aspect. And so like if you're watching it as a kid, of course it's going to terrify. You're not going to pick up on the comedy, but then you watch it again as an adult, and you're like, wow, this is really funny.
Actually, at that point, I saw Gremlins in theaters. Yes, I am that old.
Good
And
grief.
it, I even as a kid, I knew that was comedy.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
couple of scenes in there it was a little rough, but it was a good time. And of course, Gremlins 2 took the comedy thing to the absolutely inane extreme.
Jack
Little
Frost.
Monsters was my favorite
Oh yeah, Little
from
What?
Monsters.
the 80s. Little Monsters. Y'all ever seen that?
Yeah.
The Nickelodeon show? Yeah, yeah.
No, 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 no. It was an actual movie. Howie Mandel was like the monster under the bed, and he was blue.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and there was like that big other one that they had to like kill with the flashlights apparently, or like UV lights or something. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, I enjoyed that one.
I
But
like Monster Squad. It was a good one.
I don't think I've
Fred
ever
That was a
seen
good one.
that.
Fred
Yeah, that was a
Savage
good
when
one.
he was a little
Mhm.
kid.
Yep.
But back to the point I was making, or the question I was asking you, JJ. It's like, where do we draw the line here? Because someone that loves horror movies and always like me, I love horror movies, but I have a specific subcategory that I enjoy watching, which is demonic possession. And the reason for that is because of The Exorcist. That was the first horror movie I watched as a kid. Watched it on VHS, scared the ever living hell out of me.
That's a high bar you set for yourself there, buddy.
Yeah, I've always been chasing that high ever since, and no other movie has ever done it for me.
Have you
Thankfully, last year
seen
was it last year? Yeah, last year I got to meet Linda Blair, which was freaking awesome. But
I
Yeah.
was so jealous seeing that photo. But have you seen The Exorcist, the version you've never seen? That's actually the official tagline of it.
yeah, I have the VHS of it.
Okay. Yeah, that I remember watching that in college and oh, it was so good.
Yeah, but my question is like for someone like me that enjoys that stuff, like I've always watched that. I prefer to watch movies involving demonic possession, probably because of The Exorcist and it was done so well. Does that quote unquote open me up, like puts me in the danger zone to attract this stuff to me? Or can we use where can we draw the line there?
Common sense is where you can draw the line.
Thank you.
I would put it this way. If, like, for example, I'm interested in not only demonic possession films, but zombie movies and supernatural films. I don't really care for slashers or torture porn or things along those lines. If you keep your interest at interest, no problem. Like, it's not going to affect your life at all. Now, if it's to the point where you begin trying to go to occult bookstores or attempt Ouija boards to contact the demonic, if you take that interest and turn it into actualization, then you are stepping over a line which you really should not ever cross. If you start trying out magic and, exposing yourself to even more potential vectors for danger, that is a really horrendously bad idea. As long as it stays at interest, no problem. If that interest begins to affect your life, problem. And of course, there's a lot of gray area in that. I'm not going to, sit here and say, well, this covers everything for everybody. There's no way it can be as simple as that. But if you lead a disorderly and chaotic life, if you invite chaos into your life and you allow your interests to then dictate your actions, that's when bad things can happen.
I think another perspective too there is I feel like you can't have these conversations without introducing the things we've talked about in the past, like psychological nature of humans, where and not to rehash the same thing we talked about before, but just to kind of topically bring it up again, people who are predisposed to having a psychological issue that's hardwired into their brain or something like that. I feel like I'll pose this as a question. So do you guys think that people who have that nature about them where they might become obsessive just due to the fact of the nature of their psychological state, they should be extra cautious? Like, let's say you have somebody who has a diagnosed psychological issue, but they also like horror movies. Do you think that could make them more likely to fall down that rabbit hole and maybe attract something? And I guess the second part to that is like people who have predisposed psychological issues or challenges, do they become easier targets for this sort of thing, especially when they open up vectors like media or content that might be including concepts of demonic? Or is it kind of like everybody across the board has an equal chance of attracting this sort of thing if they're not careful?
I think, and I'm just speaking for myself because I'm the type of individual that tends to hyper focus on things that grab my interest. And if I like it,
Yeah,
I
same.
like hyper focus on it for weeks. That's how I finish like TV shows within a span of like, I don't know, a week and a half, whereas it takes others like 3 years. But I think from that perspective, just speaking for myself, if you tend to hyper focus on certain things and you find yourself drawn to one of those things and you just go in a deep dive into it, depending on what you do, it could lead to some negativity. I think you can open yourself up because, like they say, curiosity killed the cat, right? It's one of those things where if you're not careful and you just go too deep into it, and for you, it's like, okay, I think I'm doing this for research purposes. But if that research purpose turns into you're drawing a damn pentagram and sigils and stuff on the ground,
Obsession. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, to be honest, some people might do that just out of like bare curiosity because, people are like, this is bullshit. So I'm going to see if anything happens. There are people that like Dave Chappelle says about Rick James, habitual line steppers. They do it
True.
because that's just in their nature. It's like if I tell JJ, like, dude, don't do this because somebody's going to come and like stab you in the neck, you're going to be like, bullshit. If you're that type of person, you'll be like, bullshit, prove it.
My God.
I'm going to
Yeah.
do this right now. So I think it's not objective because everybody's different. If you tend to hyper focus, yeah, maybe you could fall into that trap and you're not really consciously trying to do anything wrong. So that's just my perspective on it.
I would agree, but bringing in particular mental disorders is an interesting part of the question. So let's say someone suffers from psychosis, where they can hear voices or they see people which aren't really there.
Like Dean.
And there's no Dean on this call. What are you talking about? No,
What?
I'm just talking to
I
myself.
mean, but I mean, that
JJ, there is no podcast. You're just here talking.
that would not surprise
That's my
me
greatest
in
fear.
any-
That's my greatest fear. Like waking up and then just like nothing. There's nothing like the last however many years. It's just you in a straight jacket. That's a true horror movie right there.
Maxwell's demon. But no, I mean, but that could absolutely start to fuck with your head even more. You know, if you start watching demonic films and getting really, really into it, who knows what the heck the voices may begin to morph into. Yeah.
Okay, real quick. Here's an interesting thought. Or I'm not gonna. I won't say like. I'll just give you. I'll let you guys decide if it's interesting. But if this is logical, so if demons' whole shtick on humanity is to cause issues and problems that destabilize, and this is, this is just talking from like, maybe just let's just focus on Judeo-Christian or whatever, like, that perspective of religion and humanity. If the demon's goal is to disrupt and bring down humans to a point where they just are so far away from having a chance of divinity or whatever, it seems to me like they would look at somebody who has a psychological issue, who might become infatuated, and they just be like, this guy's already messing up his own life. This person's already doing my job for me. So maybe it's like less likely for them to actually experience something demonic because it's just too easy. Like, okay, I'm going to move on to somebody else who I can actually wreck.
Who
Terrifying.
knows? I mean, Malachi Martin did a pretty decent sample size of those who were affected by demonic influence. And there were no particular indications of socioeconomic status or anything else that pointed to you are more likely to become targeted by the demonic than not. So it honestly, it's up to it's up in the air. Who the hell knows? But
The
the
bane of
more
humanity.
it is, but the more doors you go to open, the more risk you absolutely invite onto yourself.
I don't want to derail, but I have to ask you, JJ, from you don't maybe not you don't have to talk about your personal beliefs, but just from what you've studied and stuff like that, what would your best guess be about the purpose of humans from a religious perspective? Like if they're like divinity or whatever, like why do we exist? And the reason I bring this up is because I thought about this recently again, just last night, interestingly enough. And I not again had no idea we were talking about this today. So it's really creepy that, I thought about this again. But I was thinking, are humans kind of like looked upon from the divine side, either demonic or the good side? Are we kind of like a test of the nature of God and evil, where it's like, oh, we need like we're gonna put them through the ringer and see what they choose, sort of thing? Or is there another answer to that, or another perspective where it's like, well, people are just kind of going through life and we're just gonna see how they react, but there's no real challenge or there's no real answer to choice for them to come to like the good side or the bad side? Because I feel like I know that's a really high level question, but from what you've studied, like what is the purpose of the nature of humankind when it comes to choice of good and evil, or another perspective?
Well, I mean, if you look at me, it is a very high level question, but it's a good one.
High level.
If you look at it from a Christian perspective, then it's because God loves us and because God is existing at all times and all places, then there's no history. It's just always omnipresent for God. So creation, it doesn't matter when creation happened, he knows what humanity is. And then if you look at the opposite side, it's that Satan or the devil or the infernal, whatever you want to call it, is here to corrupt and putrefy us before God in order to cause him pain. And if you look at Zoroastrianism, which we gathered a lot of stuff from, then Ahura Mazda created humanity, but then Ahriman, the arch enemy, said that it will make your creatures hate you. So it's always that kind of core idea of corruption.
Yeah, I think the reason why that gives me even more pause and fear is because it's like, the best way to put it is like, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't, in a sense, because it seems like when you go back to the concept of like the Garden of Eden, where we took a bite of the forbidden fruit and then we got the knowledge of good and evil, it almost seems to me in a logical sense that something that we consider evil, like Satan or Ahura Mazda or whatever, like we are given the knowledge of the bad things that are out there that we otherwise shouldn't be aware of, and we should just be there loving God. And then that goes in the same vein of people who are, say, like Christians, ultra Christian people who believe that our whole goal is to get to heaven and worship God for eternity at his feet. And that is a scary concept to me, because if you introduce the concept that I know I'm going to get this wrong, so Chris, please jump in with your history knowledge, but there's a religion, I can't remember if it's Greek or whatever, but whoever brought the fire for man was punished, right? And who was that? Prometheus, yeah.
Prometheus
So
in Greek mythology.
And that's similar, right? Because it's like we were given this knowledge of awareness of all depths, up and down, or like, heights and depths of knowledge, and we weren't supposed to have that. But that also makes us who we are as individuals when we're going through this life. So it's almost like, it seems like the answer, if you do subscribe to, say, Christianity in the most like significant way, that you'd have to give that up. You'd have to give up that awareness and knowledge just to purely hold on to the good and closeness to a divine deity or God or something like that. So going back to the demonic, it's almost like we're testing ourselves and our exposure to this sort of thing. But at the end, if we want to achieve this goodness within the context of like Christianity or something, we would have to give all of that up. And then in that way, we wouldn't really be ourselves. And so it's almost like there's a tearing of the self in order to reach out to the divine. And I'm not, and just to clarify, I'm not saying this is what the nature of reality is. This is just a perspective that is, if you're applying logical progression within the context of a like Christianity or something. And that's the scariest part about what for me anyway.
It's not. I mean, yeah, because I mean, if you look at a lot of these types of events, and it's not just Christianity, it's also Judaism, even ancient Judaism, eating from the tree of knowledge. If you look at Enoch, it is the watchers coming down from heaven in order to teach humanity forbidden arts, in addition to copulating with the daughters of man. And that kind of thing goes on. But it's not so much just knowledge in and of itself, it's knowledge of improper things, knowledge in which people should not have. Now, whether we shouldn't have it or not is entirely open to the question, because we tend to view knowledge as, if you have it, it's a good thing. If you don't have it, it's a bad thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that we have. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
But Dane, you brought up an interesting point. Well, with the whole concept of exposure to knowledge and all that stuff. And what I was thinking, this kind of just came to mind. When you're born as a baby, don't you kind of go back into that state? Because you're not born with any knowledge. You're not born with anything.
Yeah,
so you're kind of
just
thrust into the world.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, even if like you're exposed to certain things, you don't wholesale stick to them. And if you don't mind, I'll use you as an example, right? You were born and you were in an environment where at one point you were deep into your faith. I remember when I first met you, that was the case. And then you kind of just, through your own discernment, you just broke off on your own and started asking questions and started doing this and different things, that's, that just quickly came to mind. Like,
it's funny that you just jumped like 400 years in philosophy right there. Because, I mean, that was a major open question during the Middle Ages from Descartes onward. Are people tabula rasa, blank slates, or are we born with certain innate knowledge, whether that's a priori or a posteriori, in how we are shaped and then view the world?
Yeah, because I actually was literally talking about this with Willie maybe like a week ago. He asked me this question of, do you think people are born inherently good or inherently evil? And I think and my argument was it's subjective, that everyone's born with a blank slate, and then you become the product of your environment. And there are rare instances in which you don't become that. You become the opposite of it. So JJ, you in another parallel world, you could have been like this, like Bible Belt priest that hates Dungeons and Dragons and all this other stuff, you know, as opposed to the way that you are now. So, Jay,
I want to revisit what Chris said about, because I feel like
what,
I think
JJ
it's
gooning the femboys?
I want to deep dive on a whole episode of that. But we should do a whole episode of like human proclivities that just shape, like I think that would be a dark episode. You probably have to cut the whole
It
thing.
actually would be, because I mean, I see, like, especially for Japanese SNS, there are so many people that are obsessed by Japanese women who have armpit hair, or,
Yes.
you know, or people that are just obsessed with feet. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Anyway, but that
JJ
would
like
be a
finder.
fun topic.
Hooves.
I do like hooves. Why do you think I like goats so much?
Oh, you'll have so much editing to do. But Dean, your question, go ahead.
Okay. I want to switching back to the topic of the demonic and inviting that sort of thing in. I want to share this because I feel like it's kind of rare in this life to have somebody experiencing and willing to talk about a transition from maybe benign religion exposure, where you grow up Christian, but you kind of don't really get it. And then you really dive into it and you really go deep into it and you completely take it in as your life, and then you come out of it again. And the reason I want to talk about this really briefly is to give the perspective of how I felt at the time. And because I remember very vividly how I felt was very wrong giving it up. It felt very dark and it was very frightening. And I still actually, creepily enough, I still know exactly where I was on the campus that Chris and I went to together, where I kind of switched my brain in a different direction. And that moment is forever ingrained in my brain because it felt dark and sunny at the same time. And that was a very, very unique experience for me. But so I grew up Christian. I grew up Catholic, where my grandparents were ultra Catholic. That was the only answer, etc. And I went to a lot of Catholic masses. And I even went myself when I first started driving. I would go to Catholic mass by myself, and I would, go and I would just be there. And, my parents weren't really about going to church anymore. So I'm like, I'm going to keep going. And then I kind of just slowly petered away from that a little bit. And then when I got to college, I revisited Christianity by going to Bible studies and stuff like that. And I really got into closely with a group of people who were very, I would say almost like the type of people who their entire lives are waking up, the Bible, Christian music, don't consume anything else, that type of life. And so my mentality and my thought pattern at the time was, well, I grew up Christian, I grew up Catholic, I believe in it. And therefore, if that's the nature of existence for me, I should really lean into it. So I really leaned into it. I did the Bible reading every day. I listened to Christian music all the time. I prayed over my food, like all that stuff. And it felt really difficult and it felt wrong, but it felt like I attributed that to like the reason it felt wrong was because the devil or something was trying to keep me away from going down that path. And I actually had a lot of weird experiences during that time where I'll just give you one quick one. I wanted to listen to mainstream music in my car, and suddenly the car radio switched from the mainstream radio to a Christian radio station without me touching it. And that really freaked me out. That really deeply disturbed me in the sense that like, oh, I'm really getting close to the nature of this and stuff. So experiences like that drove me deeper and deeper. But, and I've said this before on our Wandering Road podcast, the thing, interestingly and hilariously enough, what kind of pushed me away from that ultra focus on Christianity was going to a Catholic university where we had to take different religion courses. So I learned about Judaism, I learned about Hinduism, Islam, and all the animalism or whatever, like going all the way back thousands of years of human history. And even all the way back to like, when we first, humans first started coming up with the concept of God and the devil with, so stuff like Zoroastrianism. And so when I got exposed to that, I'm like, wait a minute, I have friends from other countries that I really like. And they have different religious perspectives, and they're so kind, and they lean into their religion, but it's night and day to Christianity. So I'm like, why am I devoting time and energy into this when I think that there is different pathways or different perspectives? So when I made that strategic decision to break off and stop doing that ultra Christian focus, I felt like I was getting dragged back into a negativity. So I don't even know what that was. And because now like for the last, 20 years since that happened, or 15 years since that happened, I feel great. Like I've had so much positive, good things happen in my life, blessings of, healthy children and good job and a home and all this stuff, living in Hawaii. And it's confusing because the gravity of what I experienced diving deep into Christianity was in a way like a good feeling, a heavy feeling. But when I got away from it, I still had a good experience with life. So the reason I bring that up is because I could almost say that like I feel like I opened myself up to something negative and possibly even attracting attention to demonic when I started to pull away from Christianity. But now that I feel firmly rooted into kind of like a worldview where there's no cap on what religions could be true or false or whatever in the nature of existence, I feel much more free and happy than I did when I was diving into Christianity. So I don't know where that's going to go from here with conversation wise. I'm sure you guys have thoughts and stuff, but I'll just pause there and get your perspectives on that experience. I feel like I puzzled. I derailed the episode. I'm sorry. I'm
No,
gonna go.
no. You did not. That is a very valid point because I too went through something like that. When I was in 8th grade, I got the chance to go on a missionary trip to the far flung country of Detroit, Michigan. And we stayed at a predominantly African American church, and we went out every day and did missionary work and tried to preach the gospel and did nothing but listen to Christian music and pray 4 or 5 hours a day. And I really got into it and even got saved a second time during that trip, etc. And when I came back, I began to see the hypocrisy shown by the preacher and the heretical views that were being espoused, and how kind of holier than thou the other congregants were, even kids my age or just a little bit older. And I backed away from that pretty hard. But I don't think that was a sign of opening yourself. It's just the more knowledge that you have, the less, I don't really know where I'm going with this. The more
No,
knowledge you have.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Go ahead.
I totally see what you're saying. It's like the fear. So you built yourself up on this pedestal of rituals and beliefs, and the nature of stepping away from that safe zone in and of itself causes psychological fear and fear of failure, feeling of failure, and tearing away from yourself. And that I can see now. I would agree with that 100%. I wouldn't say that's opening yourself up to something like, increasing your risk of exposing to negativity and demonic. I think it's just, you're literally just stepping outside of your home that you stayed in for so long where it felt safe. And that feeling is the feeling that we went through. It wasn't something that was necessarily wrong. It was just a really terrifying fear because the thing that we were taught during those times of our lives is if you step away, if you turn your back away, you're in trouble. And that also reminds me of like what Chris was saying earlier about the nature of being born in a blank slate and stuff. And there are very specific lines from the Bible that have stayed with me. And one of them is, and I'm sure it's not verbatim, but it's something like, when you go to heaven, you will return to being the state of children or something, or like you will become children again. And I know there's probably interpretations in that, but it's like that tearing away of the self that you built up is the negative feeling. It's not necessarily evil. It's just you're stepping into the unknown.
But I would say that the faith that I had then, and it's probably because I was a younger individual and didn't really know that much about subtlety, but the faith I had then was extremely loud. It was prominent. It was at the forefront of a lot of the crap that I did. And the faith that I have now is quiet. It's no less powerful than what it was, but yet, it does form a very core part of who I am and my identity. But I don't feel the need to go out and loudly proclaim to the world, this is what I believe. It's just
Right. Yeah.
what I am.
I think if you have to do that, it's like you're trying to convince yourself
Yes.
that
100%.
you actually believe that stuff. It's
Yeah.
if you guys never
Nail on
watched
the
Game
head.
of Thrones, there's a line where Joffrey says, "I am the king." And his grandfather, Tywin Lannister, responds, "The man that has to say he is the king is no true king." It's
Yeah.
on the lines of, who are you trying to convince? Because your
Exactly.
actions will determine what you believe and what you really think you are. And
Yeah.
since Dean, you mentioned like there was a part of the Bible that that stuck with you. The one that sticks with me, and I attribute it to a lot of people that I see on social media and stuff. It's I think it's in, correct me if I'm wrong, JJ. It might be in Revelation, it might not be, but it says Christ comes back, and then the people that go to him and they say, "Did I not worship in your name? Did I not do this for you?" And he like turns away from them. He like
I never knew
tosses
you.
them away. He's like, I don't know you because you never did that
Yep.
for me. You did it for yourself. You did it for
Exactly.
performative reasons. You did it like these preachers do that they have these millions of dollars and they're going to ask for donations. So you could buy a Rolls Royce? Like, come on.
Christ demands that I travel in a private jet.
Man.
Yeah. Like that dipshit that was asking to see people's tax returns. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? And I have a gripe with the Catholic Church with the amount of fucking wealth that they have.
10%.
You're talking about like giving to the poor and stuff. Motherfucker, you could inflate the world economy if you wanted to with how much gold and treasures that you have. Do that.
You got that right. I
Cure
mean,
world
how?
hunger.
Yeah, and I mean, just talking about tax returns, shit. If you, I mean, that's not true. That's not just true for televangelists. It's true for a lot of Catholic congregations, especially if they happen to run a school in which your kids go to. You're required to prove what your income is, match whatever the minimum requirement is, and so that your kids can go there. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, the world is full of hypocrisy,
Accurate.
But I guess to tie it back in, I think to the topic that we're talking about today, how interestingly enough, the three of us, based off of our upbringing, kind of broke out of our shells. And we're now in this mindset of, I know what I believe, I don't have to prove it to you. So to pull it back to the, things being demonic and stuff like that, just because you came out of your shell, you started exploring things a little bit, you were curious and a little bit analytical, you wanted to do some research, and you, for example, looked into, I don't know, JJ, you did an episode previously about names of demons, right? Just because you looked that up doesn't mean you're going to go start summoning them. I mean, if you start doing that, then that's your problem. You're kind of shit
Exactly.
out of luck. But just because certain things are labeled with demon in the name, or they have these scary looking monsters on the cover, or anything of that sort, anything creative, it's not something you should automatically brand as demonic or evil just because you don't like the way it looks or you don't take the time to understand the concept of it, what it's trying to convey.
And don't, in fact, that is its own danger. If you see evil lurking in every single bloody shadow, then you're never going to recognize when it actually comes up and bites you in the face.
And
No,
I think
100%.
yeah, an additional perspective and kind of touching back on the psychological conversation we had earlier, I feel like by nature of humans, we want to face the things that will hurt us or kill us the most, or some, a lot of people do, not everybody, but there's a tendency to want to do that. And it's in the same vein as like whenever someone is, I just saw a video recently of someone talking about how they had throat cancer. And she was talking about how when she told people she had throat cancer, all the things they would list off about the things they thought caused it for her. It's like, oh, do you smoke? Nope, don't smoke. Well, maybe it was your makeup. Well, no, it's not make, whatever. She's going down the list, right? And then really like her perspective on that was, well, really what they're doing is they're asking you the things, they're running things across you to find out what caused your cancer so they themselves can check and see the things they do if that's going to cause cancer for their throat. And so that kind of goes back to the idea of visiting the demonic or even just religion in general, the curiosity. It's like, oh, I need to like really figure out what can really destroy me. And the highest question, and like destroy my soul forever. Like that's the penultimate terrifying thing, right? So I need to go see this. I need to go experience this for myself so I could figure out how to defeat it. or I could figure out if there's a way to stop it. But that's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like Chris was saying, like, oh, I'm going to piss off this guy because someone's saying he's going to stab me in the neck, but I want to see for myself if I could stop being stabbed in the neck. And so I think that's where a true danger of human psychology comes into play with the demonic when people are trying to explore it. You might have the greatest intentions ever deep down about figuring out how to defeat it, maybe even not just for yourself, for other people, but then you ultimately walked yourself into a bear den and you really are going to find out, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this on my own. I'm not going to be able to defeat this or whatever. And so I think that's, to me, that is one of the ultimate entryways into exposing yourself to something truly evil or demonic, is just out of the nature of wanting to prevent it from happening, which is kind of like silly, right? It's like, man, that's too much. That's heavy.
It is, but it's also, I think, as the satanic panic has really kind of taught those who have looked at it, is the more you ascribe to the infernal, the less responsibility you have for all the bad things that are going on in your life.
Yeah.
If you're cheat and then say, oh, the demon of lust must have gotten me. No, it was your dumbass who went out and did it. You can't attribute this. Now, if you do bad shit, it's because you did bad shit, not because, something made you do it.
It was Pazuzu.
Don't even get me started
Zozo.
on that. Zozo, yeah. Alrighty. Well, I think we have brought this home and it's been a phenomenal conversation. Chris and Dean, where can people find y'all at?
Yeah, so you can find The Wandering Road on pretty much every major podcast platform. Just search for The Wandering Road. We are also on video on YouTube and on Spotify. So if you prefer to watch video episodes and look at our ugly faces, you can find this there. If you would like to be on the show, you can reach us at twroadpodcast@gmail.com. We have people reaching out to us, and we always enjoy interfacing with the community, whether you have a question, a comment, whatever, or you want to be on the show, share your story. Want to remain anonymous, share your story, and we could make an episode out of it and read it on the show. We've done that quite a few times with some listener stories. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and reach out to us at our email address. We're also on social media. You can find us on our Facebook page. Just search for The Wandering Road. We're more active on Instagram now. So if you search TW Road Podcast on Instagram, you could go ahead and give our page a follow, and you could shoot us a DM on there if you'd like to collaborate or have a story and want to come on the show.
Cool. And
all right, thanks so much, guys.
Who are listening, and those who are listening on The Wandering Road, Southern Demonology is available on all podcasting platforms, and you can find us on southerndemonology.com. But thank you all for listening. It's been fantastic to have y'all here. It's been a good conversation.
You've reached the end of tonight's journey on The Wandering Road. The show is written and produced by me, Chris, and my co-host, Dean. If you've got a scary story of your own, or if you'd like to join us as a guest, send your tale to twroadpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to follow us on social media for more haunted fun. And if you enjoyed tonight's episode, please rate, review, and share the show. It helps keep the lantern burning for fellow travelers. Until next time, keep your eyes on the road and your mind in the shadows, because the wandering never ends.